Okay, let's first review kind of what we worked on yesterday. We got the f function, which is equal to 3 times x minus 2, and the g function was equal to 9 times x to the second plus 1. So first thing we got to do is figure out what f plus g of x is. So again, I didn't give a lot of workspace here. So f plus g of x, I'm going to set up two parentheses, and I simply just add the functions together. So f is 3x minus 2. Then g is 9x to the power 2 plus 1. So to simplify it, it's a three-step procedure. So the second power just is to the x. It's not outside of a parenthesis, so I don't need to do any foiling. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I don't need to distribute because there's nothing in front of the parentheses, so I get rid of that. Okay, and then step 3, I just combine the like terms. So we got an x to the second power, and then an x, and then the constants. So x to the second, I've got 9. Then x, I've got 3. And then the numbers without x, I add a negative 2 plus 1. That's going to be negative 1. Okay, and that's simplified. So f plus g of x is equal to 9x to the second power plus 3x plus negative 1. Now, if f plus g of x equals this expression here, f plus g of negative 2 means I can just put negative 2 in for all my x's in that expression. So I'm going to have 9 parentheses 2 to the second plus 3 parentheses 2 plus negative 1. And then I can simplify that on a calculator. So I go 9 parentheses 2 to the second power plus 3 parentheses 2 plus negative 1. Okay, that gives me 41. So these are the two answers we're looking for on that section. Now I take the same two functions, but now I'm going to subtract them, taking the g and subtracting the x. So it's going to be my g function, which is 9x to the second power plus 1. Then my f function is 3x minus 2. Okay, so again, we'll simplify it in 3 steps. But I won't need the step 1 because the second power belongs to just the x. Okay, then I don't need to distribute because there's no numbers here, so we don't have to do that. Now, combine like terms. Before we do that, we make that plus, and the 3 goes negative, and the 2 goes positive. So I've got the same thing going on. It's only going to differ just slightly from what I got up here. So 9x to the second, and then we got negative 3x, and then 1 plus 2 gives me 3. Okay, and that's what g minus f of x is equal to. So g minus f of x is 3. G minus f of 3 means I just put 3 in for the x that I got when I did g minus f of x. So I just put 3 in for x. That says equals x. So 9 parentheses 3 to the second plus negative 3 parentheses 3 plus 3. And it's just plug and chug basically. Okay, I got 75. Okay. Now remember, division's pretty easy. Okay, g divided by f of x, we just make a division line and we put the g function on top in the numerator because the g's on top, and then the f function in the denominator. Now I'm not going to try to simplify that. That's just what I go with. Okay. Now, g divided by f of negative 2, so I have to put negative 2 in for x in both of the top and the bottom. So I'm going to have 9 times negative 2 to the second plus 1. Now, bottom we're going to have 3 times negative 2 minus 2. Okay, so on top we go 9, negative 2 to the second plus 1. I got 37. Okay. Then on bottom, I'm going to get negative 8, and I can just leave it as an improper fraction. I don't have to reduce it, anything like that. Okay, remember what the empty circle means. It doesn't mean multiply. It would be a closed circle for multiply. Empty means insert. Okay, so we start with our g function, and that g function is equal to 9x to the second power plus 1. Okay, now insert means I replace just the x, okay, the second just shifts outside of that parentheses. And for that x, I'm going to insert the whole entire f function of 3x minus 2. Okay, so I've got 9, parentheses, 3x minus 2, and that second power is outside my parentheses, okay? So just like that. Now my question to you got to be thinking to yourself, is the second power just to the x, or is it to an entire expression in a parentheses? It's to an entire parentheses, so we have to do the FOIL, okay? So I need to write 3x minus 2 times 3x minus 2. Now before I do that, okay, you got to remember you're going to drop your 9, and then you're going to make a parentheses without the second power, plus 1. And what I put into this parentheses is what I get out of this FOIL here, okay? Because now I make a parentheses without the second, but to figure out what goes in there, we got to take 3x minus 2 times 3x minus 2. X times negative 2. Negative 2 times 3x, and then negative 2 times negative 2. So that equals 9x to the second, negative 6x, another negative 6x, and then positive 4. Now these don't cancel, because to cancel it had to be a negative and a positive. So I add those together. That's going to be negative 12x. That's what's going to go in that parentheses, 9x squared minus 12x plus 4. Okay, now step 2 I'm going to have to do, now the power is inside of the parentheses just with the x, which is what I wanted all along, okay? Now I distribute the 9 to everything, okay? So 9 times 9 is 81x to the second. 9 times 12 is going to be 108. 108x, that's 108x, and then 9 times 4 is 36. Now don't distribute that to the 1, the plus 1 just drops down. Okay, so you got 81x to the second, plus 108x, 36 plus 1 is 37, okay? And I forgot to give you a number to put in, so we'll just go to the next part. Okay, that's my fault. Like if it's, yeah. Okay, now again another insert. Okay, so I start with my f function this time, 3x minus 2. And another thing, now I just replaced my x. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. And then the x is replaced with the g, which is 9x to the second power plus 2. Plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1. Okay. So now I just make my parentheses, and in that parentheses I put 9x to the power of 2 plus 1 minus 2. Okay. So 1, a 2, and a 3. Now we don't need to do 1, okay, because the power is not here, it's inside. Okay. So if it's in the inside, that's what we want, okay? So I don't have to worry about doing step 1, okay? So like here the power's outside, so that means I'm going to have to take 9, but I need to FOIL that expression, but here, just to the inside, so I don't need to worry about step 1. I just go ahead and distribute. 3 times 9 is 27, x to the second, plus 3 minus 2. Combine those, I get 1. Okay, and again, I forgot to give you a number to punch in. Okay, now let's get into the new stuff. The new stuff is, so what I had here was the two separate functions. And after I insert the function, here's what I get, and insert the function, here's what I get. Now, what you're going to get on this next part, okay, and it's not going to be that hard once you see me do it. you're given this, and you have to get back to the original two functions, okay? These are going to be your answers now to this next part. But it's not going to be all that difficult, because here's what the deal is, okay? Remember what that means. That they tell you what the f insert g equals. You have to find the f function and the g function separately, okay? Here's what you're going to do. You have a mathematical symbol, a square root, okay? A cubed root, I should say. Here you have an absolute value. Here you have just a parentheses. Here you have a parentheses. All those are mathematical structures, okay? Mathematical symbols. Circle the part that's inside of the symbol, just that, okay? G comes second, so that G is going to be the x minus 6. Because x minus 6 has been inserted into that expression right there. Now, what's f? Well, here's what you're going to do. Under your circle, after you've placed that, you want to place that first, you're going to cross that out, and you're just going to put x, okay? So you put the cubed root symbol, and inside you're just going to put x, okay? And that's it. So, because if I did an insertion, I would start with that, I would scribble out the x and put that in for it, okay? Which would end up with what we had. So that's the answers. Okay, inside of the absolute value structure, we have x minus 4. So x minus 4 is going to be my g, because the g is the part that's been inserted, okay? So g. Now after you place that, kind of scribble that out or x it out and just put x. So what do you have now? You got a 3. You've got an absolute value, and inside you're just going to put x and then close the absolute value, okay? Okay, next one. Inside you've got x minus 4. Now after you know that that's your g, cross it out, and that's had an x. So you could put a parentheses if you want, okay? You don't really have to. You could just write x to the third. I'll put a parentheses. X to the third, okay? That's it. Okay, next one. Again, the g is the innermost part, okay? So that's x plus 3. And after I know that's my g, I cross that out and just put regular x. So we have 5. You can put, when it's a parentheses, you can put it, like if it's a root or an absolute value, you have to put it, okay? If it's a, why don't we just put the parentheses, get used to it. So we got 5, a parentheses, and inside that we now have just x to the second minus 7. Okay, then in the next part, that root goes over there's a square root up there, okay? So the inner function is x minus 2. G of x is x minus 2. Then I delete that, but I replace it with just a plain old x. So I have 3. I have a square root, and inside I just put x. Okay? The inner structure is x minus 4, so the g function can be x minus 4. And then, okay, what I do is I have 5. Oh, let's get rid of that then and put x. A parentheses, but in that parentheses we're just going to put x, and then we have a second power and a minus 4. Okay, the inner structure is x minus 2. So we have 5. We have an absolute value, and inside that we're going to put x and then plus 3. Okay, and then here you got the inner structure, you got x minus 7, okay, and then you have a square root, that's your symbol, but inside there we're just going to put x. Okay, pause the video and do numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 real quick. Let me know if you have any questions. Pause it and do those, and then I'll show you how to do the back side. Okay, now I did this out of order. We're going to come back to that page, but then turn over to the back. It says find the inverse relation. You probably never heard of that before. What you need to do first in an inverse relation is simply swap the variables. Like where a y is at, you're going to put an x, and where the x is at, you're going to put a y, 8y minus 1. Now, your job now is to get the y by itself out of that inverse, okay? First, you got to switch the variables, though. So here's y. Two things happening. We got a times 8 and a minus 1, so we got to add 1. Now, since we don't know what x is, we're just going to put x plus 1. So I now have x plus 1 equals 8y. And then I have a multiplication by 8, so I'm going to divide by 8. And since I don't know what x is, I can't divide anything by 8, so I underline the entire expression and put 8. Okay? So you now know what y is equal in the inverse relation. It's x plus 1 divided by 8. Okay, my next one, you got to switch the variables, so an x goes where the y is at, and a y goes where the x is at. Okay, now you have to get the y by itself. So here's my y. I got two operations, a times negative 20, a plus 3. So we need to undo the plus 3. Again, we don't know what x is, so we put minus 3 behind it. And now I would divide by negative 20. Okay, now I know what y is, so it's equal to the expression x minus 3 divided by negative 20. Okay, now my next one, it gets a little more complex. Okay, we put an x where the y is at and a y where the x is at. 2y to the third minus 7. Okay, and we have to figure out what the y is. That's what you're doing on all these. Now you got, ignore the power, we'll deal with that at the end. Okay, we have a minus 7 and a times 2, so we're going to plus 7. So that's x plus 7 equals 2y to the third power. We have a times by 2, so we divide by 2. But again, we don't really divide anything, we just make it a bar and put a 2 there. So, x plus 7 over 2 equals y to the third. Now, remember, we have to now get rid of this third power. Here's how we get rid of a third power. You get rid of a second power with just a regular square root, so we're going to get rid of a third power with a cubed root, okay? So just put a root over that expression, put a 3 in the index, so it's a cubed root. Now you know what the y equals. It equals the cubed root of x plus 7 over 2. Okay, next one, kind of the same idea. We switch the x and the y. And we have to get that y by itself. So we're going to add 6. Add 6, so that is now x plus 6, because we don't know what x is, equals y to the second. Now we don't have to divide, because y is not being multiplied, okay? But we do have a power to get rid of, okay? This time it's a second power, so I'll make a square root. You can put a 2 if you want. If it's square root, you really don't have to put a number there, but I will. Okay, and that's what that's equal to. It's equal to the square root of x plus 6. Okay, and I'm going to do some more on this other page, and then you'll be ready to work on the back four. Okay, so swap your x and y. And we got to now get the y by itself. So I got a times 7, a plus 3. No power, so I don't have to do a root. So minus 3, that can come over here. But now that's x minus 3 equals 7y. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 7. And that's what we have, x minus 3 over 7. Okay. Don't need a root because there was no power that I had to undo. There was no power I had to undo. Okay, next one, we got to get the x by itself. X equals 8y minus 1. And then we have to get the y by itself. Okay. So here's the y. We've got a minus plus 1. And it'd be x plus 1 equals 8y. Now divide both sides of our equation by 8. And we're there. Okay, we don't have a power, so we don't have to worry about that. So it's just x plus 1, all divided by 8. Okay, next one. Switch the x and the y. And we have to get that y by itself. Okay, so we minus 7, minus 7. And then divide by 4. Okay. And x minus 7 divided by 4, we still have a power we have to get rid of. Okay. Which I can get rid of by making a cubed root. Okay, on the other side. So y is equal to the cubed root of x minus 7 divided by 4. Okay, last one. Switch your x and y. And get the y by itself. So you minus 10. So we have x minus 10 because we don't know what x is, so I can't subtract. I don't need to divide. I just now go to make my radical with a 4. Okay, that's how you cancel out a fourth power. Make a radical on the other side and put 4. So the fourth root of x minus 10. Okay, now you're in a good position. Do 5, 6, 7, and 8.